So we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome today, everyone, for the Mosquito Borne Diseases. This presentation was created by Dr. Eva Buckner, and unfortunately, she's not going to be able to make it today. So that's why you're having me. My name is Jim Davis. I'm the County Extension Director for the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Sumter County, and we have Dr. Faith Oi. Faith is a professor of the Entomology and Nematology Department from UF IFAS and also the Director of Pest Management University. And both Faith and I have done these presentations for, I don't know, about 3 years now. So, we're hoping to have Eva on, but we'll have her on the next time. She did a great job with her ticks presentation. So we have a lot of stuff for you guys today. Again, if you just attended, if you like a copy of this presentation, the video segment, just email me and I'll send it to you. I'll share it. And a PDF, I have to get permission from Eva, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And if she's okay with it, I'll send you the PDF for that. So we're right now in rainy season, thankfully, in Florida. And with that rainy season, unfortunately, comes with a lot of mosquitoes. And so we're going to talk about mosquitoes entirely. Now, one thing that we always like to explain to people with mosquitoes is that, some insects have an incomplete life cycle. Some insects have a complete life cycle. And this is really important for management and pest management. So for an incomplete life cycle, think of probably one of the most common pests that we have in urban pest management, Faith, is the good old cockroach. So just think of that. Most of these insects with the incomplete life cycle, like cockroaches, the nymphs, kind of look similar to the adults. For gardeners out there, if you're familiar with chinch bugs, that's another good example. So mosquitoes are not that. They have a complete life cycle. So egg, larva, pupa, adult. So think of it like a butterfly, or think of it like a beetle. And so mosquitoes have a very complex life cycle. They definitely need water to hatch. That's very important. That is one thing that's necessary. And depending on what type of mosquito larva may hatch out of the eggs in about 24 to 36 hours. Or the eggs may sit in moist soil for months before hatching. And so you have typically 4 instars. So if you look on this slide right here, so we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it pupates. And I thought the pupa mosquitoes are very interesting, how they hang out at the top of the water like that. So the pupa stage is aquatic. It's a non-feeding but active. And they last about 24 to 36 hours. Now, the females, the mosquitoes, depending on the species, they can live about 2 to 4 weeks. So they don't live very long, but as soon as they hatch out, especially the females, they're going to start looking for a blood meal. Now, the male mosquitoes do not take a blood meal. They pretty much go after nectar, and some of the females will go after nectar as well. But it's the females that take the blood meal, they need this blood meal to develop the eggs. And typically, the females will live a little bit longer than the males in general. So we have about 3,500 mosquito species worldwide, about 90 mosquitoes here in Florida. So, and not all these are disease-carrying mosquitoes, only just a few, which we're going to cover some of the more important ones. We have 4 invasive mosquitoes. So these are species that are not native to the area. So Faith, correct me if I'm wrong, but Aedes albopictus, which is the Asian tiger mosquito, is one example. And it's a very tiny mosquito. It comes out early morning, late evening, and is just the reason why they call it Asian tiger mosquito. This thing's vicious. It's very tiny. It's a very, very tiny mosquito. But it's one of these invasive mosquitoes that can be a vector for some of these diseases. And so we have at least some of the few non-natives, of course, can potentially have become into the invasive species status. Faith, can you talk about? Are you familiar with the
Toxorhynchides?
Thank you.
Yeah, so Toxorhynchides is a beautiful mosquito, but it doesn't
Beautiful.
take blood. So
Mhm.
one of the ways that you can tell that you're dealing with Toxorhynchides is that proboscis. is hooked. So can you see that? Yeah, yeah, there you go. It's hooked at the end there, and it's actually biocontrol against other mosquito larvae. So not
Mhm.
all mosquitoes are bad, but it's ginormous. People get scared by them. And that Aedes albopictus down there, if you can see the size difference, that one is actually pushing out Aedes aegypti in distribution as well.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
that Aedes aegypti is we're going to talk more about that.
yeah.
But that's a mosquito that vectors, can vector dengue, chikungunya, and um, and also yellow fever. But see how look how tiny this mosquito is, and you can really identify this mosquito by this little white line here on its prothorax here, and the little white specks on the leg. But look at the size difference between the two. I mean, this is what people think of moving to Florida. What mosquitoes are, but it's a very gorgeous mosquito, and it's a non-harmful mosquito. Like I said, not all mosquitoes in Florida are actually harmful. All right, so we have different types of mosquitoes. So here we have some mosquitoes we're called floodwater mosquitoes. So uh, this mosquito species, we have three main categories of mosquito species based on the aquatic habitat they develop in: floodwater mosquitoes, permanent water, and container mosquitoes. Now, floodwater habitats, these can include, the mud flats, marshes. These are think of it as kind of like can be ephemeral. So some of the water may not be long standing, but just enough to hatch those eggs, and which usually takes Faith about a week, I think, in general, with some of these eggs to hatch. But look how this pasture is right here with this flooded water. If that flooded water remains for like a week or 2 weeks, yeah, you're going to have mosquitoes. I have a retention pond where I live, and it was flooded for a while, and we had just a terrible outbreak of mosquitoes and in our neighborhood. And this is maybe a strawberry field, but you standing water on there, even these retention ponds, excuse me, these culverts here, these easements where that water hangs out, that's just enough for those mosquitoes to breed in. And this all goes for you homeowners. This is all very important. So I'm going to give you an example in one of the areas that I'm at. So let's say if you're in the Villages, okay, which is a large retirement community. In between, this is not only happens to Villages, but in between the houses, you have it's dipped. It's like a little ravine between the houses. It's horticulturally, it's terrible to maintain turf grass because it constantly holds water. And so if we get a lot of rain, people irrigating a lot, that water stands there. Like I said, if it's over a week or two, those mosquitoes can take hold. Okay. So it's not necessarily these big rural areas. It can absolutely happen in urban areas. So eggs are laid in the moist substrate. Um, the eggs can dry out. Then once the habitat is flooded with water through rain, could be irrigation or whatever, and then water reaches the eggs, and that's the cue for them to hatch. Okay, so that's pretty amazing. So this is how come you have a dried out area and you get a lot of rain. You have boom, you have an explosion of mosquitoes, and people are wondering why that's happening. Well, now you know. Okay, so yeah, these salt marshes, ditches, whatever. These are all areas that can hold these mosquitoes. And then we have permanent water. So Faith, you mentioned years back, you said whenever you're flying over Florida, it looks like Swiss cheese,
Mhm.
right? And so there's water everywhere. And so this is why we have so many mosquitoes in Florida. And at one time, Florida was very close to not being a state. It was the vote was very, very close. And because people said they said the only thing that's in Florida are mosquitoes and alligators. And for those of you that near Orange County, so I don't know if Yolanda's on there from Osceola, but in that area over there, it's all Osceola's pasture, but in Orange County is basically a swamp. And so Orange County was called Mosquito County back in the day. And and if we didn't have mosquito control in Florida, a lot of people probably wouldn't be living in Florida, or especially the coastlines of Florida, because we're right for the mosquito habitat. The temperature, the environment, the water. This is why those mosquitoes thrive, and this is how come some of these non-native invasive species come in and thrive. So mosquitoes in the permanent water group lay their eggs singly, or some mosquitoes actually lay their eggs in rafts on the water surface. So the eggs, so the mosquitoes that lay their eggs in these permanent water areas, their eggs really cannot dry out. They have to be laid in the water. Okay, and we're going to talk about some of those, like the Culiceta and Culex mosquitoes. Now, permanent water habitats such as ponds, swamps, and brackish marshes retain water most of the time. So this is what you see if I take you to Green Swamp or Hog Island, or for those in Gainesville and Paynes Prairie and so on. All this is standing water that's right for mosquitoes. Now, for homeowners, this is where you come in, because this is where you can develop mosquitoes, and it's amazing how small of a container these mosquitoes can actually breed in. So these are called the container mosquitoes. And some of the examples are the Asian tiger, which we just showed you, and the yellow fever mosquito, or Aedes aegypti. But these container mosquitoes, they can lay their eggs in all sorts of small things. We call them tree hole mosquitoes too. So old tires, that's a favorite. Potted plants. So you see this potted plant, it's pretty. It's maybe got some, I can't tell what else is in here, but pansies and whatever. But this saucer on the bottom, if that water is there for over a week, you're going to have mosquitoes. Buckets. Okay, I see this a lot. People leave a bucket in their yard and forget about it, and it's full of water. I mean, that's like a mosquito haven. Bamboo. I love bamboo. I have bamboo, but even these bamboo can hold water, and that's just enough. Okay. Now, vermilion nut as well. And so you have some standing water in bromeliads that can harbor mosquitoes. And of course, the traditional bird bath. Okay. And with bird baths, with any of these containers, you really want to empty out. And we're going to talk about source reduction later on. But, with bird baths specifically, people always ask me about bird baths, how to keep them clean. Should I put bleach in there or whatever? No. Just empty it off. Take a sponge. Just don't dump the water out now. Dump the water out, take a sponge and clean all around the bird baths, because these mosquitoes will lay their eggs above the water line. So you want to make sure you scrub the entire bird bath. Keep the water clean and fresh for less than a week. Like to do every 4 days, maybe, or 4 to 5 days. Give them some fresh water, and the birds will be happy, and you can help reduce those mosquitoes.
Hey, Jim, just real
Yes,
quick.
ma'am.
Those tree holes, I see people in the US using great stuff to fill tree holes. And it's supposed to be some kind of remediation for mosquitoes. It's better to just get a trowel full of sand, and put it in there, and that'll really help
Yep.
prevent with the mosquito breeding site. And there's a question from Marcia here. Does screen over a rain barrel help out or prevent?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely have that screen. And
So it depends on the mesh though, right?
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So you really, because some of those mosquitoes are really tiny,
Mhm.
so cover it somehow, but just be mindful that some of these mosquito species are itty bitty.
Yeah. Double
Yeah.
mesh it or whatever,
Mhm.
and just make
Yeah.
sure that screen, depending on what kind of rain barrel you have, because sometimes with the rain barrels, you actually cut an opening and you stick the downspout inside it. Just make sure that screen or whatever is like against that entry point, because even if you have like a little space, that's enough for mosquitoes to go under and lay eggs. Okay. So think about it like that. But also, with those rain barrels too, what I also promote is, of course, keeping the screen, trying to prevent everything from going in there, but you can also put mosquito dunks in there as well. And so that'll help keep those mosquitoes, help mosquitoes out. Yeah, Wesley says that the Asian tiger small enough to get through the average pool cage screen?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not
That is a good
sure.
question.
So my pool cage screen is not perfect,
Mhm.
right? So I have like little holes and tears, and I suspect that's how the mosquitoes are getting in there, but it's definitely not as much as if I were just hanging out in my yard at dusk.
That is a good question, though. So we're going to talk about source exclusion later, but this is all these container type mosquitoes that we have. So mosquitoes only males feed on nectar. Not all mosquitoes bite people or animals. Female mosquitoes need a bud meal to produce eggs. Some mosquitoes bite, but do not spread pathogens like viruses. So these mosquitoes that don't spread any diseases are basically nuisance mosquitoes. Um, Taking blood meals from hosts, that's where mosquitoes can become infected with the pathogen, like a virus, and then able to transmit that virus to another host. So less than 10 species in Florida can do that. And we're going to show you some of the main ones, like some reservoir hosts, like birds are a very common one that's out there. But some mosquitoes are daytime. Hunters can be crepuscular, dawn or dusk. You can actually be bit by mosquitoes all day. If you're out in the woods where it's not sun and it's shady, you're still going to get hit by mosquitoes. So it's very important. It's very important to
Sorry.
that's okay. It's very important to wear that mosquito repellent, which we're going to talk about later. It's very important, not only for mosquitoes but for ticks. I'm actually more scared of ticks than I am mosquitoes, but both can be a nuisance. You get out in an area that's in hiking or doing photography and it's full of water. I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything. Those mosquitoes are going to be absolutely terrible, and you're going to have to move. But yeah, blood meals the host can vary. It can be invertebrates, frogs, insects, reptiles, mammals, humans, all sorts of different animals. Faith, you want to talk about this a little bit? Oh, you got to unmute.
So how do humans and other animals get infected by mosquitoes? So this is the area called vector competency, and it's really kind of complicated because when you think about the insect digestive system, it's like anything going through our digestive system, right? Our digestive systems are built to break things down. So basically the mosquito has to find you. So that's one trigger. And then it's going to have to successfully insert its proboscis into you and hit some kind of blood vessel or capillary. And then the salivary glands, if it is infected with something, it's going to spit into you, right? And then you're going to have some kind of reaction, not necessarily from the pathogen itself, but from the proteins. Your body is going to say, hey, there's something foreign here. And so that's when we feel the mosquito bite. But then the amount of virus being injected is also a factor in disease transmission. So it's kind of a complicated system because you have to go through this whole travels through the midgut, get through the circulatory system. And so in order to be a competent vector, it has to evolve that way. And so this slide is about viruses, but one of the more prevalent worldwide diseases is malaria, right? So we can develop vaccines against viruses, but malaria is much more difficult because it's a parasite. It's a completely different organism. So yeah, vector competency is complex, and that's why not every mosquito is going to be able to transmit a given pathogen.
Mm-hmm. And Faith, do people emit a certain quote unquote chemical more than
Oh,
others?
so
What is that name of that chemical? Do you know?
the chemical itself.
I always want to say octanol, but I don't know if that's correct or not.
Well, I was gonna say, so if you go to like Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff like that, they have these mosquito magnets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have generators for CO2, and I think it is octanol in there, but those those volatiles don't attract every mosquito.
Mm-hmm.
So you get some, You can actually get a pile of mosquitoes if you have those running in your yard, but they're not gonna get every biting mosquito.
Yeah, my daughter is mosquito magnet. I don't know what is with that kid. She's producing something. As soon as she goes out there and she gets hit,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
amazing, and develops like a little reaction to it. So it's amazing. She'll if I take her out in the yard for 10 minutes, she'll get hit like 5 or 10 times. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So mosquito-borne diseases in Florida. So we have some endemic and exotic. So endemic means from here, if you will. So St. Louis encephalitis, Eastern equine encephalitis, Triple E, or West Nile. Now we have, which is good. We've had no St. Louis encephalitis cases since 2014. We've had 3 Triple E human cases in 2018 and 2 in 2023, and 23 human cases annually. On average of West Nile, with periodic outbreaks. In 2019, in my county, we did have 1 fatal case in the Villages area. I think that was near Finney Springs. If y'all, my Village residents, know where that is. So exotic, chikungunya, Zika, dengue, malaria, I believe yellow fever. I put yellow fever. I don't think yellow fever is an endemic to the United States. I don't think it is. But I put it as exotic. So no local cases of Zika since 2017. I don't know if y'all remember that. It was going like wildfire at the time. And chikungunya. So chikungunya came first, and then Zika, which is vectored through the Aedes aegypti. Dengue is the one that we're going to talk about later. Dengue is the that we see increasing, and it pops up. We have these outbreaks almost every year, and dengue is a very interesting, very interesting disease. And you have malaria. So we've had in 2023 7 cases. Was that locally acquired too?
Yeah, and that was what the concern was that
Yeah.
these people had not traveled. They didn't have any, in fact, the people who actually were diagnosed with malaria were predominantly homeless, so they didn't have shelter against the mosquitoes. And so
Yeah.
this is a concern. So when I talk to pest control, I tell them, never say never, because you think we don't have malaria. Malaria kills over 650,000 people globally, and there's an infection rate of 250 million annually globally. So it's a very serious disease, and it's debilitating.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of amazing that we don't have malaria like other countries. We did uh
We used to.
we used to, and the malaria belt was it was a Tallahassee, Gainesville area, and Jacksonville.
Mhm.
That was the no malaria belt. But it's just shocking that we don't have it to the extent of other countries. And so one little quiz question for you guys. So this is when I ask my butt camp kids, I ask them what's the most dangerous animal in the world, and they say sharks and lions and this kind of stuff. Some kids say people. Well, that's the second. It's the mosquito is the most dangerous animal in the world. Is carrying these diseases, and as I talk about, I put in yellow fever, even though we don't have it here in the States, but it is something you have to worry about traveling. But yellow fever has a very interesting history with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But endemic again, permanently established, always circulating in the environment between the mosquitoes and non-human animal reservoirs. Can be transmitted to humans. So, for example, the animal reservoir of West Nile are birds, and West Nile is transmitted from one bird to the next by mosquitoes. But the mosquitoes can also spread that disease from birds to people because both mosquitoes bite both the humans and the birds. So exotic is not permanently established, no non-human reservoir. It's unlikely to persist. But you do see these locally acquired cases every now and then, which is very concerning. All right, so this is something Eva put in. So the current status of mosquito-borne diseases in Florida. So she said so far in 2024, Florida is on average with the usual annual number of equine encephalitis and malaria human cases, less than 1. We are below average compared to average number of dengue and West Nile human cases, but we're in the middle of mosquito season. So take that in consideration. So Dr. Buckner says that we are definitely going to we're definitely going to see more dengue human cases in the next few months. West Nile is relatively low this year, but we may see more in a couple of months. But while the risk is low for triple E malaria compared to dengue and West Nile, there's never a 0% risk of triple E or malaria.
So Linda has a comment in here that
Mhm.
Triple E and West Nile, there's a vaccine,
Mhm.
and she's exactly right.
Yep. And so East Tripoli, um, we're the state with the most horse and human cases. Highest number of horse cases in North and Central Florida, and human cases are sporadic and not clustered. So these kind of live in mosquitoes that vector this live in tree plantations, hardwood swamps, upland hardwood forests. You get a higher risk of triple E. Florida has less than 1 human and 44 horse cases per year. So triple E in Florida, transmission between birds and mosquitoes throughout the year, less than 1 human case per year. Peaks in July. Yep, that's about the month we're in. We had 2 human cases in 2023 and about average of 44 cases, equine cases per year. So here's the transmission. So it cycles between mosquitoes and birds. So the Cuticeta mosquito, which primarily bites bird, is responsible for spreading the virus among the birds. And the virus then multiplies in the bird's bloodstream. So people and other animals like horses become infected with the virus when the mosquito species that feed on many kinds of animals feed on infected birds and bite the people. People and horses are considered dead end hosts because unlike birds, they don't develop high levels of virus in their bloodstream and cannot pass the virus on to other biting mosquitoes. So triple E is rare but serious in humans. So fever, chills, muscle and joint pain, you get that with a lot of stuff. Okay. You usually recover after 1 to 2 weeks and develop symptoms related to brain swelling in about 5% of those infected. As always, we're not medical doctors, so anything medically related, you need to contact your healthcare provider. Fever, headache, vomiting, diarrhea, convulsions, coma, all that stuff. And about 35% of those affected is a fatality, which is pretty serious disease. So thankfully, it's not as severe as it is. And of course, children, adults over 65, those with a weakened immune system are most vulnerable. West Nile infects humans, birds, mosquitoes, horses, and other mammals. This is the most important of the mosquito-borne viruses now endemic in the United States. And so West Nile transmission cycles between mosquitoes, especially the Culex species, and birds. And so some infected birds can develop high levels of virus in their bloodstream, and mosquitoes can become infected by biting these infected birds. After a week, the infected mosquitoes can pass the virus to more birds when they bite. So mosquitoes with West Nile virus also bite and infect people, horses, and other mammals. But again, they're what's considered a dead end host. This means they do not develop the high levels of virus in their bloodstream. They cannot pass the virus on to other mosquitoes. So West Nile vectors, Culex mosquitoes, urban and suburban areas. This species, Nigropalpus, in rural areas. The larvae can develop in a variety of habitats. So I've seen pools like this. I mean, that's you might as well just put mosquito fish in there and just take care of the mosquitoes. And we're going to talk about the mosquito fish, the gambusia. I'm going to talk from my 2 counties. In the county that I work in Sumter County, they give out the gambusia for free. In Hillsborough County, they actually advertise multiple times of the year. They actually have signs on the roads saying, "Come get your mosquito fish," okay, which are very effective. But yeah, anywhere. So think of these like kind of like the 80s mosquitoes, if we will. So symptoms appear 2 to 14 days after bite from infection. And so you can see, you can read all that kind of good stuff. I'm not going to go over it, but yeah, this is the body aches, nausea, headache, all that good stuff. So how do they monitor for West Nile or Tripoli? Well, have you seen these before, Faith?
The sentinel chickens,
That's
absolutely. You can
that's
also get a pile of mosquitoes from them too.
Yep, this is actually at my office at the fairgrounds in Sumter. So it's walking distance, and this is one of the coops that they have out there. And so this is a great location, by the way, because years ago when Dr. Uh, uh, Roxanne, is it Connell or Connolly? But we were doing samples for her, sending samples to her, and gravid samples. So it's basically taking a black 4-inch pot, lining it with a paper towel, filling it with water about halfway, and checking for mosquitoes. We place them out, and so the Aedes mosquitoes would lay their eggs above the water line. They're black and they're spherical, very easy to see. This is where I placed the gravid traps at the time, that and other places. And this area right here had the most in it. And our area was Aedes albopictus. Like Faith said, that that yellow fever, the Aedes aegypti is being driven out by this much more aggressive mosquito. But Faith, do you know why I caught so many mosquitoes right there? Because behind these shrubs is a development. So this is
Oh,
actually one of my agents live there.
oh my.
And yeah, so I actually caught more mosquitoes there than I did with the old tires, not too far from there. So they have these sentinel chickens out there. And so what these sentinel chickens do is they actually is like a little reservoir, if you will, but this is how they check for this disease. But these chickens do not develop, well, put it this way, if a mosquito bites a chicken, it's not going to spread that disease. It's kind of like a dead end host, if you will. So even you see these sentinel chickens, people ask me, like, oh my gosh, they place these chickens out there, they're going to spread the disease. No, the chickens don't spread the disease, which is very interesting. So when you see these coops out there, they're out there monitoring for this Tripoli and West Nile. It's pretty cool. All right, so malaria, again, is the most important mosquito-borne disease for humans. So you can look at the different areas. I think most people are not surprised that Africa has malaria. I think they're kind of surprised whenever they see parts of South America and other parts of the world that has malaria, because a lot of the kids they just think Africa, and well, no, it's way more spread than that. So here you have in Central America, Africa, and so on, India, and everywhere else. So a lot of places that have it. 90% of malaria cases and deaths in Africa in 2016. Pretty amazing. So they have these different plasmodium that causes this disease. And Faith, if you want to add anything, this is by all means. And I think Anopheles gamba is the one that is the most predominant one in Africa. Is that right?
Yeah, and we have Anopheles species in Florida that are
Yep.
capable of transmitting as well. So
Yep.
the plasmodium in Florida was Vivax. It wasn't the
Vivax.
falciparum. Yeah.
So that was the one that these locally acquired cases. So again, malaria was eradicated in the U.S. in the 1950s. And as recently as 1935, caused 4,000 deaths in the U.S. Always a risk of local transmission. Did they use DDT for mosquitoes as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, DDT was like
I mean,
general use
homeowners had
pesticide.
DDT.
Yeah.
We were dusting babies' cribs with 4% DDT powder for bed bugs back then. Yes,
Wow.
we had DDT.
Wow. And so most of you are familiar with DDT because of the harmful effects, especially for wildlife, like for birds and everything. So we don't use DDT, and we don't use DDT in the United States. Faith, do people use DDT around the world?
They should not be. But it's hard to get numbers in some
Hmm.
countries. Let's just put it that way.
So it still may be, yeah.
It's still a
It's effect.
possibility.
It was effective, but yeah, it's terrible, not so good. And I think they got rid of it in 1972. The only reason I know that's because that's my birth year. So since malaria was eradicated from the U.S. in 1950, cases are very rare. But Sarasota County in 2023 had 7 cases. Palm Beach in 2003 have 8 cases. So that's a little bit disturbing that we're having an emergence, even though it's not a lot, a slight emergence. But let's go back to one thing that the United States does very well is mosquito control. And so again, if we didn't have that, those numbers would probably be exponentially higher. Okay. Not going to go too much into this, but you can see all the symptoms of malaria. Take about 7 to 30 days post-bite. Now, the number of days that the cycle happens is different for each Plasmodium species.
So,
Oh,
so
dengue,
Jim,
dengue.
can I
Go
jump
ahead.
in there? So you know that
Yep.
timeline for when you can start to develop symptoms. You know the articles that have been coming out on revenge travel, right? People
Mm-hmm.
go overseas, and there's the places where malaria is also are very beautiful places, right? And there, if you want to go visit India or Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So just be mindful about where malaria and some of these other diseases may show up, and you might want to go see your doctor because there are ways you can prevent getting malaria as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not medical doctors. We're not going down that road.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I just find dengue very interesting. So the most important mosquito-borne viral disease affecting humans worldwide. Um, Worldwide, you have 50 to 400 million infections a year. You have 22,000 deaths a year. Um, you have outbreaks regularly since the 1940s. Pretty crazy. In 1934, 35, you had 15,000 locally acquired cases. You had an outbreak in 2009, 2010. And we get about 34 cases annually in periodic outbreaks. A lot of those occur in South Florida. Annual number of cases have increased in recent years. That's pretty disturbing. I love this sign, visit Florida, catch the dengue fever. That's great. So here in outbreaks, look at this. I mean, this is pretty crazy. So you're seeing a curve increase. So in 2023, 199 cases, primarily Miami-Dade area.
Mhm.
So then I imagine, Faith, that's probably due to Aedes aegypti. Does I don't know, does albopictus vector
I
dengue?
think it is a competent vector as well.
Yeah.
They have a significant overlap, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
viruses that they can vector.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So yeah, I mean, you always get these travel advisories too. I think the latest one I saw was Puerto Rico. They had an outbreak over there. So you have to, like Faith said, whenever you go to a different country, like several years ago, I went to the Dominican Republic. I was very conscious about what I needed to get going over there. So just do your research, ask your doctor, make sure that you're fully protected and aware. I just pulled this off the web. So this is the um, from the Florida Health Department. So this was they have these periodic updates that you can view. So this is June, not too far away. So in Monroe County, which is there in South Florida, they have 2 confirmed cases of locally acquired dengue fever. Okay, that was not too long ago. So you can see how this stuff keeps emerging and keeps coming up. So how to prevent that as a homeowner? Well, there again, Aedes aegypti is this one right here, and that's the primary vector. But again, it's going back to this inspecting your yard and making sure that you don't have any um, containers having any water in it. Okay, and so these outbreaks can happen really really fast. So if you go back, and it was very interesting to see the Zika timeline of where it spread in South America and how fast it spread. I mean, I think then they had in Brazil, one of those countries, they had the army coming through and inspecting and going people's yards or whatever, and making sure there's no standing water. I mean, it was very serious at the
Singapore does
time.
that too on a
Yeah,
regular basis. Yeah.
yeah. And so all you have to do is now, I don't know if y'all can see it, that little cap that I have, little bottle cap. That's all it takes, guys. You can fill water in that and get mosquito eggs. Okay. Um, just lucky bamboo containers that you buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, or one of these places that have this. It's not a bamboo, but you have to have water inside it. It usually comes in a black pot. Well, that's just perfect for mosquitoes. Yeah, so just make sure that all these things are emptied out, taken care of. Here you have your rain barrel on the next slide here, I think, but or it's already on that one. So they call it breakbone fever because of muscle and joint pain. It can be severe. So years ago, in ICU, there was a person with dengue fever.
Mm.
Okay, which was serious case.
So we
Now,
actually, oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Jim.
no, 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 go ahead.
So we actually had, we've had people come to class at PMU who have had dengue, the breakbone fever. So there are actually 4 serotypes, right?
Yep.
And most of the time, in 80% of the cases, it's going to be more the mild, I feel like I have the flu kind of symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, with this breakbone fever and the dengue hemorrhagic fever, that's when I actually have pictures of people bleeding out of their eyes,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
That's dengue hemorrhagic
so
fever.
yeah, that's the one on the lower right when you have these blood coming, these orifices.
Right.
That's the bad boy of the dengue.
That's
Mm-hmm.
bad boy. That
Mm-hmm.
is dependent on how many times you get dengue. And that's why it's really important to protect yourself and just prevent trying to get this in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And I never used to talk like this about dengue and chikungunya and whatnot, but it's here now in Florida. So I always feel like it's important for us to know that it's in the state of Florida.
Yep. And yeah, as you can see, I remember looking at those cases, so it's ever increasing. And
Hmm.
so, and like I said, you have 4 serotypes. Okay. And now in theory, you can have all 4, which is pretty scary. Now they do have now I was looking on the CDC for the latest updates, and they do have a vaccine that's approved for the United States called Dengvaxia. That's supposed to be pretty good. So that's good. But yeah, so that's dengue fever. Yeah, then the hemorrhagic dengue is that's the bad boy of the dengue. So again, this is one of those things you have to be aware of going into other countries. So we don't have yellow fever here, but I'm going to talk about it because this is a pretty interesting disease. There is a vaccine, only one vaccine approved in the U.S., which is that one I put up there. I got that off the CDC. Aedes aegypti, yellow fever mosquito, same one that vectors dengue and chikungunya. That's a pretty amazing mosquito. High fever, chills, 30 to 60% mortality, 15% develop serious illness, organ failure, bleeding, shock, death. So this is a very bad disease and historically very important. So this is so if you go to South America, this is what the CDC says as far as your vaccinations. So if you're going to Brazil, yeah, your vaccination is definitely recommended. The red parts here recommended since 2017. And then you have your other areas, such as Chile and stuff like that, vaccination not recommended. But it's not only in South America. but in parts of Africa as well. So again, that's why it's important when you travel, your travel advisories, your cautions, and figure out, okay, what's my vaccinations, if any, do I need when traveling abroad? Now, what I love about yellow fever is the historical context, and I always love to see how insects affect wars. And poor Napoleon got very devastated by insects whenever he went into Russia, and whenever he tried to invade Hispaniolan area, he just got killed by insects. Um, so um, so yeah, in 1741, British forces, they were reduced from 27,000 to 7,000. I think that was an area in South America, if I'm not mistaken. So Napoleon's forces got decimated in Santo Domingo. He lost about 30 to 50 men, 30 to 50 men per day. Okay. And so he was losing so many people, okay, in this little war that he wanted to do. He needed money. So he sold 820,000 acre tract for $15 million. What a steal that was. And that was known as the Louisiana Purchase. So the reason why the United States has that land today is simply because of a mosquito. Okay. And so pretty amazing. And 8,000 to 12,000 people died in 1 year in Louisiana. So that's where they got this saying, pretty soon people have to dig their own graves. They were dying so fast. And in the Spanish American War, you lost more people to mosquitoes than you did actually during the war. Okay. So that's just a few cases out there. Do some research on Napoleon when he tried to invade Russia, and how many people he lost over there.
So,
But go ahead.
so Jim, I like that history part too. So, we actually had a serious yellow fever outbreak in 1888 in Florida, in Jacksonville. And that's what started our Florida Department of Agriculture.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
did not know that. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, bugs in history are cool. You got to look more of that stuff up. It's pretty neat. All right, so let's talk about control here on the end. So we're getting close to the end. Oh, bug zappers. You're going to kill a lot of moths, not a lot of mosquitoes. Those are not effective. Your mosquito plants, not effective. Oh, I get this all the time. Eating garlic, vitamin B, bananas, no. The repellent braces that you wear around your wrist, those don't work. These ultrasonic devices, they don't work. I don't know, the Spartan mosquito eradicator that Eva put on there. She said, I don't know much about it. She just had that on the slide. Bats, bats, bats. Now, I love bats. They're a protected species. They're wonderful. But I'm going to tell you, bats don't eat all that many mosquitoes. They eat more moths than they do anything else. But they're still good to have. But people like to put up bat houses, which is great. It's awesome. Just don't put bat houses on your house, for goodness sakes, that I've seen other old publications have. You don't want bats in your house. Okay. But bat houses are great. They're cool. Place them out of ways. We love our bats, but they're not really good mosquito hunters. They're after moths. Okay. What does work? Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, can I jump in on those ultrasonic devices? I feel like I have to say this every time we see this come up in one of our webinars. Most of those ultrasonic devices are at a frequency that will make your dogs go deaf.
Yeah.
So it's not a good.
They're not pet friendly. No.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. And so what does work? It's simple source reduction. Going back, whenever Faith and I talk about urban pest management, you have your, insect growth regulators, your gel baits and all this kind of stuff. Exclusion. We also talk about exclusion. Exclusion is works here as well, and that's often underrated. So here's your source reduction, but let's go back to your screens. Well, I have a pool area I'm looking at with a screen, and I have a guy mowing my yard, and sometimes he hits my screen with a weed whacker. Well, guess what? That's an entry point, not only for snakes and everything else, but mosquitoes. Okay. Make sure you don't have any holes. Make sure you leave your door closed. Okay. Um,
So Jim,
if you leave that door open, those mosquitoes will find their way. And if you're in Lanai, then you leave your glass door open and the mosquitoes come into your house. I say that because that's experience.
so, so I got an answer back from Ted Burgess on the size of the screening because I was like,
Cool.
I know that there are different sizes, right? And he
Mhm.
said for Aedes albopictus, this is for Wesley, for Aedes albopictus, you got to make sure that it's the small insect type of screen, and it'll say small insect on the tube.
Oh, wow. So we don't know really, let's say the
Yeah,
screen around my lanai. I don't know if that small insect
yeah, I don't
screen.
either. Yeah.
That's okay. That's interesting though.
Mm-hmm.
So, bye, Jita. Margaret asked about thermocells. I don't know too much about thermocells. Do you?
I For mosquitoes, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, Margaret. So, so yeah, let's again, clog. Oh yeah, clogged rain gutters. Okay. I have oak trees, leaves going in my rain gutter. They have to blow off all the time. But if you leave those in there, that those leaves can actually hold water at times. And I've seen houses that did that. And so this is where your mosquitoes come from, not and other pests. Um, uncovered, yeah, uncovered boats for sure. Um, open trash cans, leaky hoses, wagons, other toys, water bowls, low areas. All those are great examples. Wheelbarrows, um, yeah, tarps, anything that can hold water for a short amount of time. So we always like people to do a check around your yard and make sure you don't have any items that are holding water. That's the best thing that you can do. Um, let's say on your, and this is what I need to do on my doors to my pool, is I'm sitting there looking at it right now and I see light coming underneath it. Mosquitoes can come underneath there, and so can other bugs. So really, you should get some door sweeps, ideal, to stop those mosquitoes from coming in. But I can't stress enough on keeping doors closed because whenever we had an infestation in our neighborhood, my wife left my garage door open, and then she closed it, and then she left the room to my dryer and wash machine door open, unloading groceries. Okay, Faith, you should have seen how many mosquitoes I had in that room.
I believe it.
I had hundreds and hundreds. And in my pool area, I had thousands on a wall because she left the doors open. And so I'm like, shut the door. So it just takes that amount of time to get those mosquitoes in the house. It was I've never seen anything like that in my life. Okay. All right. So containers. Well, I mean, you can use these mosquito bits, these dunks. These dunks will work good in rain barrels and in your fish ponds. Just be careful with some of the dunks. You want to make sure that it doesn't hurt your pump itself. So be careful with those. Clean your bird baths. And if you mosquito bits, you can actually put in water and spray on your bromeliads, and that'll work. What I also like to do too is on some of our bromeliads, if they're holding water, I do exactly this. I take my water pressure and I clean out my bromeliads. The nice thing about bromeliads too is if you have bromeliads in there, if you don't have that many, guess what, guys? You can just dig up the bromeliad and dump it upside down because they're air plant. They don't need soil, so you can just dump it upside down, get the water out, and it's done. Okay.
Or just
Um,
splash some water in there, right?
yeah, just flush some
Just,
water in there.
yeah,
Yeah,
flush it out.
yeah. Faith called me out today and make sure we wanted to cover this. So this is harborage. All this vegetation makes a lovely home for mosquitoes. If you have, I should have put a picture of my hose reel. So I have one of those boxed hose reels. It has a tiny hole at the top. It's one of those automatic ones. Awesome. But I never leave the top open anymore
Hmm.
because I left it closed. I opened up, there's mosquitoes all in there. And also, I found a mouse living in there too. Okay. So, those areas can harbor, but look at all this vegetation, all this moisture, this humidity. all these plants don't offer a lot of wind circulation, and which mosquitoes like. Okay.
That's
So
where they're resting, right?
that's where they're resting. They don't like it
Yep.
where it's windy. So this is where all they're resting. Okay. So we do have this great publication called Landscaping Methods to Prevent Pests from Entering Your Home. You can check it out. I have a lot of tips for you on that, on how to hopefully reduce those. Yeah, repair all your screens, windows, and doors. That's always a no-brainer. When going outside, wear long sleeve shirts and pants. If you go hiking, you better do that in Florida. Wear long sleeves and long sleeve pants, closed-toed shoes, and wear a hat. You use DEET. It's fine. I'm not a big fan of DEET. The smell, I cannot stand the smell. So I use picaridin. Doesn't have a smell. Works great. I love it. IR 3535, oil aluminum eucalyptus. All these are really good for keeping those mosquitoes and other pests, chiggers, ticks off of you if you're going hiking or outside. Yeah, so obviously the higher percentage of DEET, the longer it's going to last. Now, most people don't understand this. So if you're hiking for 6 hours, you're going to have to reapply. So you may have to reapply in most of your hikes. And they have these ones for kids as well. And make sure you do based on the label, because the label is a law. Make sure you apply that appropriately and correctly to your child, because you want to make sure they're protected. Fans are a great way. Keeping those mosquito populations down as well. And of course, the gambusia, the mosquito fish, is wonderful, and they're free through your local mosquito control program. So there's a lot of resources for you guys for mosquitoes. All you have to do is type in mosquitoes, University of Florida, IFAS. Definitely recommend you going to the Florida Health Department or the CDC. The CDC has a lot of great tips and a lot of wonderful information for mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases. And of course, the Florida Medical and Entomology Lab, they have a cool website. So any questions, go to that website. Any questions directly, Dr. Buckner has her email right there.